Chaturhotram karma shuddham prajanam viksha vaidikam vedadhyaya santate vedam ekam chaturvidam.
Chatu, 4. Hotram, sacrificial fires. Karma Shuddham, purification of work. Prajanam, of the people in general. Vikshya, after seeing. Vaidikam, according to Vedic rite. Vyadadhat, made into. Yagya, sacrifice. Santatyai, to expand. Vedam ekam, only one Veda. Chatuvidham, in 4 divisions. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation. He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which people's occupations could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda into 4 in order to expand them among men. Purport. Formerly, there was only one Veda. Formerly, there was only the Veda of the name Yajur, and the 4 divisions of sacrifices were there specifically mentioned. But to make them more easily performable, the Veda was divided into 4 divisions of sacrifice, just to purify the occupational service of the 4 orders. Above the 4 Vedas, namely Rig, Yajur, Sāma, and Atharva, there are the Purāṇas. And the Purāṇas, the Mahābhārata, Saṁhitās, etc., which are known as the 5th Veda. Srila Vyasadeva and his many disciples were all historical personalities, and they were very kind and sympathetic towards the fallen souls of this age of Kali. As such, the Purāṇas and the Mahābhārata were made from related historical facts which explained the teaching of the 4 Vedas. There is no point in doubting the authority of the Purāṇas and Mahābhārata as parts and parcels of the Vedas. In the Chandogya Upanishad 7.1.4, the Purāṇas and the Mahābhārata, generally known as histories, are mentioned as the 5th Veda. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, that is the way of ascertaining the respective values of the revealed scriptures. Amadhyana Dimirandasya Gyananjana Sharakaya Chakshur Anmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachanam Angung Langayate Girim Yakripatamahang Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shri Mati Bhakti Charu Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shri Mati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyabadi Pashtata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Gadadhar Shri Vasari Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Chaturhotram karma sudham prajnanam vikshavaidikam yadadhat yagya santatyai vedam ekam chaturvidam. He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupation could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda into 4 in order to expand them among men. Hare Krishna. And good morning. And so as we described yesterday, as the chapter itself described, this is the appearance of Sri Narada. And prior to Sri Narada Muni's appearance, Srila Vyasadeva, beginning in text number 16, it says that the great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium, This happens on the earth in different ages due to unseen forces in the course of time. So he could tell what was coming. And as we also described yesterday, the sages at Naimisharanya forest also, they also could see what was coming. And so therefore the benefit for everybody, they performed the 1,000-year yajna. And yesterday's verse, the great sage who was fully equipped in knowledge could see through his transcendental vision the deterioration of everything material due to the influence of the age. He could also see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus he contemplated for the welfare of all men in all statuses and orders of life. In today's verse, he saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupations could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda in 4 in order to expand them among men. And Srila Prabhupada quotes there at the end, very last line of this purport, that according to Srila Jiva Goswami, that is the way of ascertaining the certain respective values of the revealed scriptures. So there is in philosophy, there's what is called deontology. I don't know if any of you have heard of deontology. And not exactly deontology. Deontology is there. It's also a science. It's a study of duty and morals. Right? It's a philosophical branch. It's not so popular, but it's one of the divisions of philosophy. But there's also a division called epistemology. So epistemology means the study of knowledge. What is knowledge? And how do you know that you know? Sometimes we think we know, but we may not necessarily know. So there's systems in place to determine if what you think you know is actually really true. So this is called epistemology, the study of knowledge. So when we speak about knowledge, we are speaking about 3 ingredients primarily, or three variables, right? We speak about the knower, we speak about the object of knowledge, and we also speak about the process of knowledge, right? The process of acquiring the knowledge. And in Vedic terms, and this is described by Srila Jiva Goswami in his Sandarbhas, the Tattva Sandarbha, he describes how in the same way in the Vedic setup you have what is called the Pramata, the knower. It's you and me. And then you have the Prameya, which is the object of knowledge, right? Or the known. And then you have the Pramana, right? The Pramana, the process of knowing. The process of acquiring knowledge. And there are different ways of acquiring knowledge. Srila Jiva Goswami explains, and the Vedic literatures explain in general. There are different ways of knowing. There is what is called pratyaksha. Pratyaksha is knowing through sense perception. I can see you, you can see me. So you acquire knowledge through sense perception, through seeing through the other senses. And then there's also what is called the anuman. Anuman means that logical inference, using logic to try and understand the world, right? The process of elimination. For instance, many of us, when we come to Krishna consciousness, or prior to coming to Krishna consciousness, we question the nature of the world, the reality of the world, the substance of the world. Like, is it really permanent? Is this all there is to be? Or is there something more? And Prabhupada describes the process of Sankhya describes that somebody may go to the extent of asking, am I this body? Am I this nose? Am I this head? Am I this? And then eventually you get to the point of understanding that the body is temporary, so therefore it cannot be enduring. So there must be something beyond the body. If I say, this is my body, it means that there's something beyond the body. Right? So this is Sankhya. So this is the application of knowledge in understanding the process of elimination. And Jiva Goswami explains that these 2 processes, pratyaksha and anuman, or logical inference and using the senses to acquire knowledge, is helpful, but is problematic. It's limited, right? It's limited in the senses, like in terms of the senses. If we were traveling to not so long ago, a couple of weeks ago, we were traveling from Nairobi to Mombasa, and then from Mombasa back to Nairobi through the train. Right? Very beautiful trains, very high quality trains, first class trains in Kenya. So One can, if you stand between the two railway tracks and then you look at a distance, what do you see? What do you see? If you stand between two railway tracks, they run parallel, right? You stand in between and you look at a distance directly above. What do you see?
They will join to a certain time, certain place. There's some distance, this two parallel line is joined.
Yes. At a certain point, it seems like the two lines come to meet. Right. Same thing with the horizon. If you look at a distance, it seems like the earth and the sky touch at some point. Right? But this is deception. It's deceptive, isn't it? The eyes are lying to you. So while the eyes are able to give knowledge, but they're limited, they can deceive one. So is logic as well. I remember years ago, there was a professor who wrote about bragging how science, mathematics specifically, is the perfect science. Mathematics is the perfect science. It pervades everything. Right? Everything is mathematics, basically. That was his whole argument. And I mean, to a certain degree, it's true. And then one Australian professor actually wrote a book, a rebuttal of that theory. That actually maths is not very, one, it's very helpful, it's not perfect. So in the same way also sometimes Jiva Goswami uses the analogy of fire and smoke, right? When we see smoke, we conclude that there's fire. But sometimes we may mistake because it might not necessarily be smoke, and so therefore it might not be fire. So while logic is very helpful in understanding and in helping us gain knowledge, but it is also very limited in that sense. At a certain point, logic fails. There's a certain point where logic cannot go. Right? It falls apart, it breaks down, especially when it comes to transcendence. So this is the defect of Jai Shishi Radha Shama Shundaki, Jai Shishi Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai Ki Jai. So these are the limitations of knowledge, the limitations of using sense perception and logic in understanding. And then there's the third way of knowing, the third pramana, or the third means of knowing that Jiva Goswami speaks about, or the Vedic literatures in general speak about, and this is the Shabda Pramana. Shabda Pramana, right? The process of, Shabda means hearing. And generally speaking, Shabda means scripture. It means scripture, right? And Jiva Goswami describes that this is the best way of knowing, right? Because, like for instance, the Vedas are known as Apurusheya. You know what Apurusheya means? It means that it's not written by a human being. It's transcendental. It comes down from transcendence as it is. It's not written by a person. Purusha means person, and the A negates that. So it's not by a person. It's not written by a person. So it's the best means of knowing for those that understand or those that want to know. That's the best way of knowing. You hear from two sources. One, you hear directly from transcendence himself, from God himself, from Krishna himself. Or you hear from those that have achieved transcendence, those that the Atma Tattvas, those that have seen the transcendences in Krishna. So you have what is called Vaidika. These are the words of Krishna himself, for instance. The Bhagavad Gita, these are the words of Krishna himself. And Krishna describes himself. And he also describes the process by which we can reach him. And also, there's what is called the Laukika. Of course, Laukika here is a specific term, meaning that those that have practiced and have realized the truth, the Tattva Darshana, then through their testimony, then we can also understand transcendence. There's no other way. We cannot use our senses, we cannot use logic to try to understand transcendence, as I just said, because it falls apart at a certain point. So this is the nature of knowledge, or this is the process of knowing, the process of acquiring knowledge, at least in spiritual terms, in spiritual circles. Yeah. And so Srila Prabhupada speaks about the different types of Shabda Praman, right? The different types of scripture. Veda means knowledge. We all know that. And Prabhupada, in some instances, for instance, he explains how even the Bible is Veda. Because Veda means knowledge that gives insight into transcendence. It gives insights into who God is, what God is. So that's called Veda. So anything that gives that type of knowledge is Veda. But here specifically, Srila Prabhupada speaks about, or at least the verse speaks about the Veda in the Vedic tradition, right? The tradition of knowledge, where everything is determined by knowledge, where everything is driven by understanding and knowledge. And they describe that the one Veda was divided into 4, right? He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupation could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda into 4 in order to expand them among men. And Prabhupada's purport says that formerly there was only one Veda of the name Yajur, and the 4 divisions of sacrifices were there specifically mentioned. But to make them more easily performable, the Veda was divided into 4 divisions of sacrifice, just to purify the occupational services of the 4 orders. So the 4 Vedas are Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sāma Veda, and Atharva Veda. And these were in turn divided into 4 parts to help purify the occupational duties of human beings. Right? And the first part is called the Saṁhitās. The second part is the Brahmana portions of the Vedas. The third one is called Aranyaka. The fourth is the Upanishads. So these are the 4 divisions of the Vedas that are meant to be occupied or practiced by different varnas or different ashrams, right? Like occupations, different occupations. The Saṁhitās, for instance, this Saṁhita means hymns and mantras like that. And Saṁhitās are meant to be studied by brahmacharis or student. Because brahmachari can be 2 types. It can be, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains that brahmacharya means brahmachari, that one who is situated on the transcendental platform. Somebody who is on the Brahman platform is a brahmachari. But it also can mean a student. So all of the student life, if you're in a temple, living in the temple, you're a brahmachari, you're a student. And the duty of a student is to study and to learn, to memorize these Saṁhitās. Like for instance, if you look at the Muslims, right? The Muslims, they have very special schools where their children learn the Quran. And by the age of 7, they memorize the whole Quran. They know the Quran by heart. So this is the duty of a student. And also in our schools also, our gurukuls also, you see if you go to Mayapur, for instance, you see the kids come and do their performance. They memorize the Gita by heart, and sometimes even the Bhagavatam by heart. So this is the application of intelligence in studying, and this is the duty of a student. There's nothing. The duty of a student is nothing else. Twofold. One is you study the Vedas, so you study, you memorize, and then you do seva, you perform seva. And this is why you find sometimes, those that go to school, to varsity, they don't succeed because they don't practice the duties of a student. When I was in varsity in college, we had pubs on the actual campus, and so you can imagine if there's no guidance, the students end up in the pubs. They don't attend classes. At Wits University, we had this. We had pubs on campus. We had pubs for engineers, we had pubs for the medics, and pubs for everybody else. So you found that many of the students didn't attend classes. So therefore, they didn't exercise their duties as students. And if you don't exercise your duties as a student at the end of the year, what happens? You don't pass. You fail. Yeah. Right? So a student is meant. There's a lifestyle for a student, and as I said, just described here, the lifestyle of a student is to apply oneself in studying knowledge. And then the second part is called the Brahmanas, the Brahmana portions of the Vedas. So each of these 4 divisions, the 4 Vedas, is each divided into 4 parts. And the first part is the Saṁhitās, mantras, hymns and so forth. The second is the Brahmana. And Brahmana is primarily directed towards the householder. And it deals with yajna, how to perform yajna. What's the purpose of the yajna? Procedures and all of that of yajna. This is the duty of the householder. I remember when many years ago, I traveled to India. I went to South India, and I met I was invited into a householder, this one Brahmana, this Indian Brahmana. And he showed me how in his family, in his lineage, right? In his lineage, there was a fire, because yagya means fire, right? Yagya means fire. There was a fire that had been burning for 300 years non-stop. So this is the fire that they use to ignite their daily yagya, in the mornings, evenings. I mean, they did yagyas all the time. So this is the duty of the yagya, of the householder. And also the Bhagavad Gita explains the expands on this yagya. Giving in charity, for instance, is also the householder's yagya. So this is what it means here by when it says here in the purport that but to make them more easily performable, the Vedas were divided into 4 divisions of sacrifice, just to purify the occupational service of the 4 orders. So this is what it means. Each of these 4 divisions is specifically meant for a certain ashram. And then the third class is the Aranyaka, right? Now we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. At the very beginning of this Srimad Bhagavatam, we came across the sages said Naimisha Aranya. Naimisha Aranya. So Aranya means forest. Naimisha is the name of the forest. Aranya means forest, right? And there we met Shonaka Rishi and the other sages. So Aranyaka are generally called the forest books, forest treatises. These are meant for the retiree. These are meant for the Vanaprastha. Yes, these are meant for the Vanaprasthas. They're meant to study and reignite their brahmachari life. Right? And then, once one is situated in their Vanaprastha, Vanaprastha. Vana means forest also. It also means forest, same as Aranya. And then finally, of course, you have the Upanishads. And this is the philosophical part of the Vedas. This is where you study philosophy very deeply. Upanishad, as Srila Prabhupada mentions in his books, it means to sit close to the teacher, where you learn philosophy from the teacher. Excuse me. And when it comes to the Upanishads, there's different divisions, of the Upanishads. There is what we call the Jnana portions of the Upanishads. And Prabhupada says, approximately about 96% of the Upanishads are Jnana Kand. And only about 4% of this Upanishad is the Bhakti Kand. So this is what we mean when we're speaking about the the Vedas and their 4 divisions. Right? And there's more to it. There's also what is called the Upa Angas and the Veda Angas. These are also part of the Vedas. Upa Angas and the Veda Angas. Now the Veda Angas are your what is it now? Your Vyakarana. Vyakarana means grammar, Nirukti, dictionary, and so on and so on. So these are the like supplements to the Vedas. And then you have the Upa Vedas, right? The Upa Vedas are also supplement, auxiliary Vedas. And this is like your Dhanur Veda, right? This is the martial arts. You have your Gandharva Veda, which is the art of music, music and dancing. You have Ayurveda also, which is the medical science. Yeah. So these are Upa Vedas. So you see that Veda means more than just the 4 Rig Veda, Sāma Veda, and so on. There's also supplements to these Vedic literatures. And then, of course, you go a little further. Then you have the Purāṇas and the Itihāsas. Yeah. Now the Purāṇa means very old, and Itihāsa also means old. So what's the distinction between the Purāṇas and the Itihāsas? These are all part of the Vedic system again. So the Purāṇa means old. Itihāsa also means old. The distinction is that the Purāṇas.
I think it's not comfortable.
You can take chair, bro.
No, maybe another cushion like this would be. Yeah. It helps at least elevate my body a little bit. Thank you, Martha. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Can fold, no?
Yes.
No problem.
No problem.
Okay. All right. Yes, it's hard. Okay, Kijai. Much better. Much more comfortable. Yeah, so Purāṇas and Itihāsas, right? Purāṇa means old, Itihāsa means old. But the difference is that the Purāṇas means or history, old also history, right? It means the history of the universe. The history of the universe, right? Whereas the Itihāsa is the history of specific individuals in a specific dynasty. For instance, the two types of Itihāsas are the Ramayana and the Mahābhārata. Srila Prabhupada mentions here, right? The Purāṇas and the Mahābhāratas are generally known as histories, and are mentioned as the fifth Veda. So this is Ramayana it follows the history of Lord Ramachandra, right? And the Mahābhārata, generally speaking, it follows the five Pandavas, right? Yeah. So that's the difference. And the Purāṇas, they generally speak like the Śrīmad Bhagavatam. We say it's called the Bhagavad Purāṇa. It's the Bhagavad Purāṇa. And Purāṇas generally deal with 10 subject matters, right? Atra visargascha sthanam poshanam uttayaha manvantari shanukata nirodho muktir ashrayaha. Generally speaking, when we speak about Purāṇa, we're speaking about these 10 subject matters. Atra, sarga means primary creation of the elements. Krishna says that everything comes from me, right? Nobody creates the elements. And Visarga means secondary creation, right? So the difference between primary creation and secondary creation is that the elements, water, fire, air, ether, these are created only by God Himself. Nobody can create these things. Visarga, secondary creation, means Brahmaji comes and he takes all these elements and puts them together and creates this material world, because Lord Brahma is the father of this material world. A simple example is, if you go into the kitchen, Mata, you're a cook, right? If you go into the kitchen, you don't make the flour, you don't make the yeast, you don't make the salt, all these things, but you just put them together and then you cook, right? So that's secondary creation. Atra sarga visargascha sthanam, and then sthanam, it describes the universe, right? Sthanam from the Sanskrit root sta, which means to
place.
A place, or to stand, where it stands in the material world. Similar to the word, the Latin root sta, same. In Sanskrit it's sta, in Latin it's sta. And from sta you have stand. And from stand you can expand it. You can have constitution, stationary, statue. So anything that has a position, as Prabhupada is just saying, or is situated and it's standing. So this is called sthana. But in specifically in these terms, it means the universe, the planetary systems, the upper planetary system, the middle planetary system, the lower planetary system, the earth. So this is described, and so on and so on. So these are the 10 subject matters of Jai Shri Shri Radha Shama Shinda Ki Jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mayi Ki Jai. So these are the 10 subject matters of the Purāṇas. And Jiva Goswami, our Acharya, explains that there are different types of Purāṇas, right? There's different types of Purāṇas. And there's Purāṇas in the mode of goodness, Purāṇas in the mode of passion, Purāṇas in the mode of ignorance. And even the Purāṇas in the mode of goodness, not all of them deal with these 10 subject matters. Some deal with 5, some 6, some 7. And it's the Śrīmad Bhagavatam only that deals with all 10 subject matters, all at once. Sarga, Visarga, Sthanam, Poshanam, Uttaya. Utta means desire. That this material world is made alive by desire. The material world moves because of our desire. Right? This building here, this temple, this preaching center here, is there because somebody had a desire, and now it manifested. Right? The car, somebody had a desire to have a moving vehicle, and it manifested in a car. So the whole material, or the building, if you go to town, the whole buildings that you see, it's somebody's desire. So from desire manifest externally. So it's the desire that pushes or propels everything in this material world. And then, it goes on in Sthanam, Poshanam, Mutta, and then eventually it speaks about the Ashraya. Ashraya means Krishna, describes Krishna. And Jiva Goswami explains that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the only literature that deals with all 10 subject matters. Some deal with 5, 6, 7, 8, but not all 10. So this is the difference between the Itihasas and the Purāṇas. And then there's also, other divisions like the Smritis and so on and so on. And then there is what is called the Saddarshan. Anybody here has heard of the Saddarshan? The 6 philosophies, 6 worldviews. Generally, when we're speaking about Indian philosophy or Vedic philosophy, people understand it in terms of the 6 darshans, the 6 ways of seeing. And the 6 darshans are Nyaya, which means logic, right? Vaisheshika, which is atomic theory. It's very similar to modern science. Very similar to modern science where the atom is a building block of matter. Everything that you see has its origin, or the smallest building unit of everything is the atom. That's the same principle, same philosophy, Vaisheshika. So you can see that science was there way before Western science manifested itself. It was already there in Vedic traditions. They were already studying it, right? So that's the second one, Vaisheshika. And then the third one is Sankhya. I just described Sankhya philosophy. We can find it also in the Bhagavad Purāṇa, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. You have it's called Sankhya. Sankhya also means to enumerate, to calculate, to measure, like that. And Prabhupada makes a distinction between 2 types of Sankhya. You have atheistic Sankhya philosophy and theistic Sankhya philosophy. Atheistic Sankhya philosophy only has like about 24 elements, whereas the theistic Sankhya philosophy that we find in the Bhagavad Purāṇa has 26 elements. What's the difference? The additional 2 elements are the soul and the super soul. That's the difference. So atheistic Sankhya is you analyze the material world, but at the end, all you get is just analysis. Whereas with the theistic Sankhya philosophy, you analyze the material world, and at the end you end with God. Which reminds me of I forget now, the Nobel laureate, a very famous Nobel laureate. He was a physicist. And they asked him, because he spent his whole life, 30, 40 years studying physics. He said, what is the one thing that you've learned in all your 40, 50 years of studying physics? He said, something amazing. He said, I began with atoms in my hand and I ended with God. Which means that if we really study every subject, whether it's mathematics, it's physics, particle physics, whatever, at the end we are supposed to end with God. Because Krishna says, he pervades everything. So in everything, in every field of knowledge, in every atom, in every material manifestation or material expression, there should be Krishna there. So that's Sankhya. And then the 4th one is yoga. And yoga is the application of Sankhya. This is like Sankhya in practice. And of course, nowadays when we speak about yoga, people generally think about Hatha yoga. Right? Hatha yoga. And, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras describe this very nicely. But an interesting point is that in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, he only speaks about one type of asana, right? Because when you think about Hatha yoga, you're speaking about Ashtanga yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga, and one of those limbs is asana. But Patanjali only speaks about the Siddha asana. So where does all the other asana comes from? Actually, they come from Tantra. Tantra means, what Tantra means? It means to expand. To expand. That's what Tantra means, you expand. So from the teachings of Patanjali, from that just one asana they expanded, and you came out with all these other asanas. So now you have many, many Sarvasanga and, eagle pose. There's many, many, many different types of asanas. Okay. And then you have, so how many we have so far? We have 4, right? And then you have Vedanta. Actually before Vedanta. And then you have Karma Mimamsa. Karma Mimamsa. I know it's a little too much. It's a little too much. I'm almost finished. Almost finished. And then you have Karma Mimamsa. Karma Mimamsa they're like technologists. These are people that can, like now the sun is out, they can make it rain. They can make it through mantras and through some rituals. They can make the clouds gather and make it rain. These are like they're able to manipulate material elements. Yes, thank you. The material elements, and then make things that we not normally would not be able to make. Like in South Africa, there's a tribe, right? And one of the queen. They don't have kings. They have a queen, and the queen is Mochachi. And through dancing, they can make it rain. Just through dancing, they can make it rain. Because dancing is like specific type of dancing. You have certain movements you have to do. It's not like you go into a club and then you go. Not that type of dancing.
Also say the devotees go out on Sankirtan and it rains.
Yeah.
See that.
Yeah, it does. So Karma Mimamsa are those people that can manipulate the material elements and cook something nice. And then of course you have the Vedanta. Srila Prabhupada is known as Bhakti Vedanta. And Vedanta means the end of knowledge. And generally speaking, there's two types of Vedanta. There is the Dvaita and the Advaita, the personalist and the impersonalist. So those are the two types of Vedanta. And the impersonalists, of course, I won't bore you with the details, but the impersonalists, generally speaking, they have many philosophies, but primarily they have two types of thoughts, two types of schools in Advaita or monist or impersonal philosophy. This is Vivartavad and Karma Mimamsa. Vivartavada and Parinamavada. Parinama means transformation. And that specific type of transformation is Brahma Parinamavada, which means that, Brahman transforms. A simple example is, if I have 100 shillings, right, and I give 1 shilling to 100 people, how much money do I have left? Nothing. Yeah. So that's the philosophy, that there was God, and then God became the world. So there's no more God. Right? And it means that you are God, you are God, you are God, I'm God, you are God, we are all God. That's basically the end result of it. That we are God. Vivartavada, same thing. And, it comes in different ways. They say God comes into the this is all God's Leela, right? You've heard of that this world is God's Leela. This is God enjoying himself. God just expressing himself in the world. It's the same principle. That the end goal is that I'm God, you are God, and everybody God, because nobody wants to serve anybody else, right? Nobody wants to serve. We want to be independent. We want to enjoy. Science is the same thing. Kill God and enjoy. Because the idea of subordinating yourself to somebody else is, nobody wants to do it. Everybody wants to be the boss. Right? Everybody wants to be the boss. Even in the material world, you have the boss, and everybody wants to bring down the boss. Make politics about the boss, or make all sorts of things so you can bring down the boss. And why do you want to bring down the boss? So that you become the boss yourself. So you can see the expression of this philosophy in day-to-day lifestyle. So ultimately, impersonalism philosophy, whatever form it takes, it ultimately comes to this idea that I'm God, you are God, we are God. So don't bother me, let me enjoy my senses. Right? No regulation. It's very prominent nowadays, right? You kill God, so you can do anything you want. Because once you bring God into the picture, it means there's regulation, there's rules. Right? When you speak about religion or spiritual science, there's rules. Nobody wants rules. Once we enjoy our senses unrestrictedly. So this is the Advaita philosophy, personal philosophy. And of course, then you have the Dvaita philosophy. Dvaita means duality, which means that we acknowledge that there's God and then there's the Jiva. God and the Jiva. We're not the impersonalists when they say everything is one, and all that. I'm God, you. But there's the Jiva and then there's God. And the duty of the Jiva, of the individual living entity, is to serve the Paramatma, the Supreme Jiva, or Krishna. And there are 5 schools. This can be touched at another time, but there are 5 schools. And we specifically belong to the Brahma Gaudiya, Vaishnava, Madhva, what is it?
Brahma Madhya Gaudiya.
Brahma, Madhva, Gaudiya, Vaishnava Sampradaya. That's our line. That's our line, our specific line, the fifth one. And our specific philosophy is Achintya, Veda, Tattva. Simultaneous, oneness, and difference. Beautiful philosophy. Because it synthesizes everything. It's beautiful. And nothing beats this type of philosophy. Anyway, I've bored you enough. I'll end here and see if there's any questions. Prabhupada says, well, the devotees, not Prabhupada. Devotees are, they say, if you want to put somebody to sleep, just speak philosophy. Then you see. Fall asleep. It's very difficult in this age to absorb or pay attention to philosophy generally. So I don't know if there's any questions, comments.
Okay,
Very well.
in the Nectar of Devotion, it's mentioned that one should not read so many books.
Mm-hmm.
So, how many books should we read?
How do we?
How far can we go in the matter of philosophy? Because you see, like, all these Vedic
Yeah. Vaishnava Shastras are there. The Vaishnava Shastras are there. You have different types of people with different inclinations. For instance, Prabhupada instructed some of his disciples to go deep into the philosophies and understand it so they can preach to others. Because if you're going to preach to somebody who's philosophically inclined, you have to know your story. You can't chance and speak to a linguist or a professor of physics when you don't know physics yourself. Because otherwise they'll smash you and they'll. So, but for us, basically, the Bhakti Shastri, for instance, the study of Prabhupada's books, and then there's the Bhakti Vaibhava, the study of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhakti Vedanta, the study of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And even beyond that, Prabhupada writes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that we should also, especially if one is inclined that way, we should also study the books of the previous acharyas. Because this is our line. You can't cut out Rupa Goswami's books. It's part of the lineage. But not everybody is inclined that way. But as a basis, at the basic level, at the most basic level, at least the Bhakti Shastri. Yeah. It is true though that if one reads too many books, then one will become confused. When you become confused, and I've seen this also, people will lose faith. When you become confused. Prabhupada writes about this, and you should read about this in the Bhagavad Gita 4.10. Prabhupada speaks about what happens when people become bombarded with too much philosophy. They lose faith, and they become atheists even eventually. Is that okay? Any other questions? No. All right. Chaturhotram karma sudam prajanam viksha vaidikam vyadadhat yagya santatyai vedam ekam chaturvidam. He, Vyasadeva, saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupation could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda in 4 in order to expand them among men. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Bhaktivedanta Purport ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gok Premanandi.
Thank you. Nice explanation.